Folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And this is part number 3 in a series of 3 episodes where we are working on the classic Mini, more specifically rebuilding the front suspension. And in part number 1 we replaced the bearings. In part 2 we have changed the ball joints. And this part number 3, we're going to work on the drive shaft. Now the drive shaft is an easy but greasy job, so let us have a closer look on the shafts. Drive shafts, they can be a real nightmare to order. I had to reorder about 4 times to get the right stuff. And it even went to a very well-known store. And that's just because there are so many different types. Anyhow, the drive shaft I'm going to deal with is the one for a Mini with the inner CV joint pot type. This is the pot. And these are kind of the satellites that go inside, and that's how it fits. And the pot fits into the differential. And also the outer CV joint is actually for a disc brake. So it's different for a drum or disc brake, so you need to specify that. If you're going to order up drive shafts, it's up to you what you want to order. Do you want to order just the shaft maybe? Or maybe you just want to order the outer or the inner CV joint. You can order all these parts separately, so it all depends a bit on how bad or how good your drive shaft is. But I went for a drive shaft which is kind of complete, so the outer CV joint is pre-mounted onto the shaft. I still need to mount the pot at the inner side, and that's why I have these boxes where the pots are in that comes with it. The left hand drive shaft is shorter than the right hand, and I think the left hand is 530 mil versus 560 or 80 on the right hand, so you can't just use that. So I actually had to recover my old left hand drive shaft, which still had pretty good splines on it, so it was in very good condition. And I'm going to change the locking rings anyway, because I ordered those new, and you can order all these locking rings separately, so that's what I did. So we're going to put all this together, and then I ordered up a outer CV joint for my left hand drive shaft, and that's the one right here. Of course I still have to put it together now, and then you're going to need grease, because you have to grease these bearings very well. So I call these a bearing, right, but this is not really a bearing. Well, it's kind of a bearing, it's a CV joint. So you're going to need special grease for that, not just any ordinary grease. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a messy job. And while we are working on it, we're also going to change the oil seals that you have actually on the differential where the inner CV joint pot is going through. So, you know, we do all this at the same time, and then we will fit it all back together, and I'll show you on how we do this. So we're going to start with the right hand drive shaft, and this is the inner spline, and on that spline you actually find a little ring. That's a locking ring. Make sure that you have a new locking ring on there. And here you have a bit of a close-up on that ring. Now I don't need to fit a new one because this is a new shaft, but if this was an old shaft, then you would have to get a new ring. We're going to grease slightly the spline, and then this cage with steel balls in it will go over it, and we'll need to knock it in. But we shouldn't forget about the gaiter. The gaiter has to go onto the satellite, or whatever you want to call it, the cage with the steel balls, so it locks fine into it. And then we need to lock into the gaiter with a metal strip. So these are all things we'll need to do, and then we'll mount this part, which is the pot. That's going to be mounted inside the differential, and we need to pack it up with grease. The same thing for the cage with the balls. We need really to grease them in very well with special grease, and that typically comes with a tube of special CV joint grease. But you can't put the pot together like so, all in one, and then put the total gaiter on it. You can't do that because you can't get it through the hole in the subframe. So you will have to tighten up the gaiter on the outer side, the big side, once everything is installed. So I'm going to start with greasing it up a little bit so things will slide smoothly. So my next step is sliding on the gaiter, and look at the direction it goes on. And now I'm going to pack with CV joint grease this complete cage and the steel balls before I actually knock it onto the shaft. So let's start to pack this with grease. You remember when I said that this is a greasy job? It really is, believe me. And it's important to pack this. And this tube is just enough for one full CV joint. Now it's going to take a bit of time. Alright, I think this has been packed enough now. So now we're going to mount it onto the spline and make sure that it fits properly. Now, to get it on there, you should use a soft hammer and try to knock it on. There we go. And push it all the way to the edge there, okay? And that's it. It's on. And now we can install the gator, where it has to fit in this groove there. And I'm going to clean it up first a little bit because there is no need for grease in that groove. And I'm going to pull back the gator a bit. Alright, so that's on. And then you can see I pulled back the gator because I need to put a metal band on this. So I'm about ready to lock down the gator into place, and for that the cheaper kits come with tie wraps. I like tie wraps, but not for this job. So I'm going to use a metal band, and it's one of those types that you need to lock with some hooks on it, and then you need special pliers that go over this area here, and then you need to squeeze that together to bring it to tension. So this is what I'm going to use. So this might be a bit of fiddling, trying to show it on the camera while I'm putting it up. So guys, bear with me if it doesn't go very fast. So I'm just wrapping it around where it's supposed to be, as tight as I can, making sure that everything is in the right spot. I should get it a little bit further. One teeth. And I'm almost making it. Yes, I got it. And it's a bit of pushing. Now I want to make sure it fits properly, that everything is all around in place. So double check that. And now make sure that this is nicely in. And now I can squeeze it with the pliers. And just squeeze. And then that's done. There we go. Nicely in place. It can't move and it's sealed tight. And now it's time to put some more grease up here. So this is now nicely packed and greased. So I'm going to put this aside before we put it now into the car. And then once it's on the differential, I'm going to put some more grease up. So the drive shaft is as good as ready to be inserted. The pot itself, this is the part that's going to go inside the differential, and around it you need to put a seal, and this is an oil seal. So I already have removed the oil seal out of the opening on the differential, and I'm now going to put this new one in there. So each time you do this kind of a job, it's always good to replace this seal. It's a very low cost item and it only takes a few minutes to get it installed. So this is where the pot connects to, and that's where this seal is supposed to go in. So that is just something we need to knock in gently. I'll put some grease on it, and then we can fit the drive shaft. I often do this with gentle tapping of a soft hammer. Yeah, I tap all around the edges. And then when it's about level, you can use a socket or something which is about the same size to drive it a bit further. And I'm going to use a piece of metal that I can fit around the collar. So the first thing right now is to install the pot. I've got to make sure that the spline's alright. I'm going to use a Teflon bar that I can place right in the middle there and then give it a knock. Now it's in. There we go. And we put it all the way to the end. And now I'm going to put some grease in the pot itself to grease all the running areas of these bearings or these balls. There's grooves in it where the balls go in, and that's what I'm now kind of, greasing before we put the shaft in. I think this is nicely greased now. Good, so now I'm going to put the shaft in. Too much stuff. It's going in nicely. Guys, this was not me farting, okay? You might think it is me, but it's not. That's all the way in. All right, good. I'm going to put some more grease up now. So this is nicely filled up. As you can see, I have greased the whole area as much as I could. And now I will push back this gator over the actual pot, like so, and it will flip in. There's a groove there, and now that is in. Oh, I think it's in, and it feels like it. And let's see, because you want to make sure that this is really on there. That's better. Now that's a lot better now. I want to check this groove, because otherwise you can have a leak here, and that's exactly the problem that the car had before, right? Let's see that turn is. If it's the same all around. Yeah. All right, so now it's just a matter of putting this metal band up and tie it together. I have installed the spanner, and now I need to clip it together, and it should be in place. We put the pliers up, making sure that we can push it a bit. All right, and that's it. It's done, solidly into place. So now that we have the drive shaft in place, we're going to lower down the car and we'll install the upright. Now I just came back from a premiere, and a lot of the subscribers were on premiere. Well, about 15 or 20 or 30, we had a chat together, and there were some questions asked on what the tension should be on this bolt here on the shaft to tighten up the bearings. We'll do that as soon as the second drive shaft is installed and the wheels are back on, because that's the moment in time that I'm actually going to put it to torque. All right, so let me lower the car, and then we start working on installing the upright. Let's start, and I'm gonna lift this up a bit. Now, don't pull on the shaft here, okay guys? Because otherwise you might pull the gator apart. I don't want to have any debris on here. Let me move this nut out, because that will have to go out. And also notice that there is a big kind of conic washer behind this big nut here. I'm going to put this aside. Grease the spline here a bit, and the shaft. Not that it's really required, but it's always better to put some light grease up. Alright, so remember this plastic cover that we had set aside for the inside to protect this seal here? Now it's time to put it up. And this is our reconditioned upright. So now we're going to fit it. So I've placed some grease at the inside, so this ring will actually stay, otherwise it's going to move around. All right, so let's see if we can get it on there. I would be surprised if we didn't, but you know, you never know. So that is now in, or as good as in. Now it's in. Trying to get the ball joints in can be a little bit tough, so I am using a belt here that I can tension up from the top where the shock absorber connects to actually the upper kind of suspension or wishbone. So then I can lift it up, and now I will be able to fit that in. like so. All right, so let's lock it in place, or at least a little bit. It can't fall out anymore. We do the same thing on the bottom. There we go. And then I'll release this. And now you'll see what I mean by this. See how that comes down. And a spanner like this is very handy for this kind of work. Next is we're going to connect the steering. That goes on there. So let me lock down all these bolts now to the right torque, and then we continue with mounting the wheel hub itself. I will put it to tension at the end. I secured all the bolts, but now it's time to put them to torque. So the ball joints are 52 Newton meter. So let's put the torque up and torque it. That's one. And we do the bottom side the same way. That's it. That's going to turn a bit first. That's one. All right. The next step is to install the disc and then put the big nut up to put some pre-tension to the bearings. I'll do at the end the full bearing tensioning. I still have to put the brake clamp on, so I need to push the brakes before I can actually put the pressure on the big nut here to pressurize the bearings. All right, so let me get the disc and start installing it. So here we go. And then we have this big washer that goes in here. And then this big nut. So I'm going to lock this loosely for now. And once I can put the brakes on, we can put it to the real torque. All right, so this starts to feel good. There's no more play on it, although we didn't really put the bearings to tension. And now it's time to fit the brake caliper, but before I do so, I will have to degrease the disc because I've been rubbing on it quite a bit. Clean this up. You don't want to have any grease on your brake pads, so I also need to do the back side. All right, and here's the brake caliper, which I'm going to recover now and put it onto the vehicle. And hopefully it fits. Hopefully, yes, it does. Sometimes you may have to open up the brake pads a bit. And I'm going to put the bolts in from the back and a bolt on the bottom. We've installed the uprights and the discs on both sides of the vehicle. Now it's time to torque down the bearings on the wheel hub. So before we start torquing it down, I just want to show you the method we're going to use. So this is the part that typically sticks out of the disc. So you're going to need this big nut to tighten down and place torque onto the bearings. Now for that nut to be locked down, you're going to need a socket 33, and you're going to need a deep socket. So don't go with a very undeep socket because it's not going to work too well. So you need a strong, deep 33 mil socket. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to start locking down this nut in steps. I'm going to spin around the axle a bit. I'm going to torque down a bit more. We turn around the axle. And we keep doing that. So torque down a bit, spin the axle. So we're rotating the bearing inside, so it keeps rolling inside, so it settles properly. Don't do this without rotating the shaft, because then you may have wrong settings on that. Now once you have reached the final torque, you might see that the groove in the nut here doesn't line up with the hole in the actual axle for the cotter pin. There is the hole, so you will have to fit a cotter pin through it. So it may very well be that the nut is offset, so you can't fit the cotter pin. All what you need to do then is turn it a bit further until you can actually fit the cotter pin. So when I say turning it a bit further means tighten it a bit more. And that's just the way to do it. There's nothing to it really, it's pretty simple. Torquing down that nut isn't very difficult, but you're gonna need somebody in the car to push the brakes. And if you don't have somebody in the car, then I have created for myself something what I call a pedal buster. I will put one side, which is the big side here, on the pedal, on the rubber, and the other side goes underneath the steering column somewhere where I have a good support part. And then I have a rod inside that I can extend with this nut here. So if I'm putting this up and I depress the pedal, the brake pedal that is, I can adjust it with this nut, the length of this rod, and then I can actually put the pressure on. And I don't need my girlfriend or a wife or whatever to push the pedal for me. So I like my pedal buster, that's what I call it, guys. It's a very handy tool and it works for many different things. It also works for a clutch, for instance, the clutch pedal. I just made this and it's very easy to make. It's just pieces of, very simple nylon bushes that you drill a hole inside and then you just fit it together. I did it in nylon on both sides just not to damage or scratch anything, and on the pedal I have a bigger surface so it can grab onto the pedal without damaging the rubber on the pedal. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to install my pedal buster. There we go. We just need to tighten it up a bit and we should be good. To torque it to 260 Newton meters, it's going to take a lot of force. So I'm going to put a jack underneath the lower ball joint to support it a bit. I already have been torquing it a bit step by step, so now I'm at the final stage, not to waste too much time. And the brakes may not just be sufficient to hold it. See, it's sliding a bit. It's not a big deal because I can put some breaker bars in between. And that really will help. That's one, and I'm going to put a second one up as well, so that will certainly then help out. Right, so now let's push it. There we go, we got it to torque. And that's the way I'm doing this. Very easy. So now I'm going to remove the brake buster and then feel how this rotates. Here is the brake buster, and now this feels good. Now we are back to the nut, and in this case I got real lucky. I have the cotter pin right in the middle there, so the hole is open so I can put it in. But it might be that it's not correct, and then you need to turn the nut a little bit more tight until it fits. So folks, we are nearing the end of this video. We have installed the uprights, we installed the discs, we installed the wheel hubs, we installed the drive shafts, we tightened down the nut to the right torque, which is 260 Newton meters, and I keep repeating that because it's very important. And on one side I actually had to turn the nut a little bit further so I could put the cotter pin in. So now I'm going to just put the wheels up and take it for a test spin. But that is not right because I still need my spacer. I almost forgot about it. I will torque him down now with the manual torque to make sure they have the right torque level, because these pneumatic hammers can put a lot of force up. And as a last test, we're going to check the play, and there's no more play on this wheel. And initially we had a lot of play because of the ball joints that were worn out, but now all that is fixed. So I'm going to lower it down and we're going to take it for a spin. So I got back from my test ride, and now we're doing a last minute inspection. So that was a good ride. I didn't feel anything wrong with it. So let's do a last minute inspection to see if the gaiters are all dry and everything looks dry. That's good. I also checked if there was no play on the wheels, and that's good. Let me check the other side. Yeah, no leaks. So that seems to be all fixed. So I'm quite happy with the result. So guys, we've come to the end of this video and everything is working just fine. So it wasn't very hard to do. It was a bit greasy, but at the end, it's all finished and all in place. So I'm happy, no more leaks, dry engine, quite uncommon for a Mini, but we'll see how long it will last. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll see you in my next video. Now, if you just wonder what I'm going to do now on this Mini, I'm going to have to work on the inside. I have to put some dials in, have to put some carpets in, a lot of aesthetics, but I'll show you when it's all done, because putting a carpet in is not much of interest to anybody, I assume. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.